Hello. Yeah, big question. Is the exotic invasive species Crassula helmsii, water Crassula, is it a threat for the nature on the island of Terschelling? That was the title a bit of the video that I wanted to post today. That I'm making this now late in the evening. So I will post it tomorrow. Maybe this one. Maybe there's less wind and I post one from out in nature. And yeah, just it's one of the first video on this YouTube from me because I've just decided to go into different topics on the YouTube, things that I'm passionate about, what I'm really going for, standing for, working with, and it's quite diverse. So, but yeah, my history is nature. I've been working out in nature. I've been out in nature as a kid already, going out in nature every weekend. And then I took this study of nature and landscape engineering as a best option for me. And then during my studies, I went to Poland. I was all the weekends and holidays out in nature whenever I could, also during the studies. And then I picked up a study focused on amphibians, or study specialization during 20 years going out in nature. Well, you can say quite a lot compared to, I think, most other people in the world working with nature directly, diving into the ecosystems, natural ecosystems, semi natural ecosystems all over Europe. And now, the last years, I'm working again in the Netherlands. And it started with amphibians, but then slowly we got on our path. We met this exotic invasive species, Crassula helmsii, that was also invading the ponds. And for me, that was, to be honest, it was just a plant that was occupying the breeding sites at populations for amphibians where it would be good to make some better places. So it was not directly my personal goal to get rid of the plant, but it was the idea was to help the amphibians, especially the rare ones. But as it worked out pretty good to remove it, then we got involved with the removal of the plant on the island of Terschelling some years ago. And so, yeah, so now I'm working, and I must say, the last year I've been working really a lot on the island because we are removing this plant from the island. And yeah, the question is, how big a threat is this plant? Why do we need to work with it? This, and it's good to know a bit of background that in the 50s already this plant came to Europe outside in nature. It came from Australia, maybe also New Zealand, but at least from Australia. It came for as a plant for gardens or aquaria, and it was from that, from those centers. Let's say it came out into nature in England already in the 50s, and it's now spread all over the country. And in the Netherlands from about 1995, it was first found in the nature in the province of Brabant. And since then, it has really expanded all over the Netherlands. And okay, it's just a plant, an aquatic plant. It lives especially in these places that is falling dry. But it can be also in waters that are permanent, and it can be on the bottom in clear waters at least, and it can be also closer to the surface growing. And it's very well adapted, as I said, to drying waters. So, but it can also be in, forming big layers in more permanent waters. What's happening with this species is that it's really growing very fast and forming thick mats. Like some people might know that if you have a this moss in the garden, that it's very difficult to get rid of the moss. That's some gardens there's more moss than grass. Well, you can see it a bit as in this way, that there's a very thick layer of very dense plants, but not of a few centimeters, but of maybe 20-30 centimeters thick layer of plants that are covering the whole area, at least the whole area that's falling regularly dry. So it's not really growing on dry areas, but it's growing in the areas that fall dry, and also in the permanent parts. So interesting, in the Netherlands, one of the big nature conservation issues we have, that we don't have so much places that have longer lasting temporary waters. Yeah. Because we drain so fast everything, that after a rain we pull it down the water table, so it's just very short on the water. But naturally, originally, we had, of course, in the Netherlands, nearly all the Netherlands was a temporary pond or lake, you can say. There were so many water areas that originally the Netherlands would have been a complete paradise for this plant. But now we have, we keep control of the water, and we have, of course, water in the agricultural areas, and we have water in the nature areas. But yeah, especially in the agricultural areas, the water tables are just so low all the time and pulled down very fast that maybe the plant is not growing that good. In the nature areas, we have more natural water regime still, and there is especially I must admit that I don't know so well on the mainland what's happening everywhere, but at least there is this like these bit acid waters that they are forming thick layers. This Crassula is forming thick layers. So what you can imagine, to come back to that, you can imagine like with the moss, that it's just covering a complete area. And in this area, and especially the area that is falling dry, that when it's completely full of one plant, there's not the space for another plants, not that much. And apart from occupying the space, it's of course occupying it's changing the water chemistry, and probably also on land, but at least in the water, it's changing the whole conditions in the water. So it's also changing the water quality for plants and animals, which can be positive for some species, but of course it's not, it's a change. So when we are then going to nature areas where this change, of course, maybe it can be positive, but at least it changes all the community. So if we then go deeper into, okay, we have all these nature areas in the Netherlands, which are, to be honest, quite bad condition. There's not so much more to save, really. But the places that are still in nature, this plant proliferates. Yeah, it's occupying a lot of, maybe in some areas, nearly all aquatic habitats, and especially these areas that are falling dry. So then those few species, the rare species that were still surviving in those nature areas, they will also be pushed away, let's say, by this species. So then the thing is, with this exotic species, it's going so fast that it's like wheat in the garden. You remove it 1 week, and 2 weeks later it's green again, the whole area, or even maybe worse than before. And this plant can use a lot of different ways to colonize areas. So one way is of course directly through the water, that it's dropping pieces, let's say leaves or branches are breaking off, and it can just flow through the water. But of course, it can be also very easily brought by machines that are cleaning those water. It can be brought to a new place, and also by animals. And well, till recently, I thought there's just maybe 1 millimeter. I always say 1 millimeter is enough to get this plant be all over the place in 1 year, or for sure in 2 years. And now just the last week I heard, no, it's not even 1 millimeter. It can be invisible for the eye, this level of the certain cells, that they can grow out of certain cells that we can't even see. So they can be sticking to a human, they can be sticking to a net, they can be sticking to a boot, they can be sticking to a machine. Who knows, they can even be, well, for sure they can also be blown away, especially on a windy place. It can be transported by wind. So there's many ways how it can easily colonize and occupy new areas. So all this said, in the mainland of the Netherlands, we are thinking, okay, what to do? Well, we can help certain species that are threatened, and we can, of course, remove the plant there. And it's possible to remove, and even it's possible to remove and keep maintain one way or another the other species, or allow them to come back. That's possible on the mainland, but it's quite predictable that on the mainland, where there's full of waters around and where a lot of people are walking around and machines are going around, it's very predictable that it will be recolonized, especially looking at the trend of colonization of this plant through, well, maybe it's now, I haven't seen the maps, but maybe it's now already in every 10 by 10 square kilometer in the Netherlands, and soon it will be in every square kilometer. Yeah? And it's just the last 10 years that it's really occupying the area. So soon these nature areas, also outside the agriculture, and even where it's pretty well protected, they will be occupied by this plant. And that means it will have a very big impact on all the species. Now, we can remove it, but it will come back. So it's difficult. Only in the case where there's really special systems or special species, we think it makes sense to really invest to remove it. So then we get to the island. That was, of course, the question. So on the island of Terschelling, there's temporary lakes. They are so special habitats. I've gone around through Europe on a lot of places, and there's a lot of beautiful places in Europe. But temporary lakes in Western Europe, they're very rare. And together with these temporary lakes that have water during some months of the year, or maybe half of the year they have water, and they drop down in the other time of the year, mostly in summer, of course. They are very unique habitats. But all over the Netherlands and most of Western Europe, they are, first of all, they are drained, of course. As I said, the Netherlands used to be one big temporary lake, you can say. They are drained. But in the nature areas, they are influenced by the surroundings, so they are pretty drained as well by the low water tables in general. But they are influenced very much by the agricultural surroundings. So they get, apart from that they don't have so much water or so long the water, they get a lot of nutrients coming down from the sky, and a lot of other elements coming down from the sky, reaching the waters. So the water is not that clean, the community of plants and animal species that lives in temporary lakes, they are not anymore really in the Netherlands anywhere. So then on the islands, we are, what is it, maybe 20 kilometers from the coast, yeah? And there is very clean, sandy systems. And of course there's some agriculture, but it has nothing to do with the agriculture that is on the mainland. So there are temporary lakes on these islands, and they are even large, like hectares large lakes, and they have a very special plant and animal community. Of course, we are in the Netherlands, and most of them have been already, they have been under machines. There's almost no untouched place in the Netherlands, even in square meters. There are so few square meters where there has not been a machine. But even on the islands, on many places there has been. But still, these lakes, they have a very special community of plants and animals. And they're temporary lakes. So they are very good habitat for the exotic species, of this exotic species. And they have maybe not a complete community, original community, but still a pretty good community of plants and animals. Not just the lakes where we are now working with this plant, but over the island, there's many more lakes. Okay, so now, getting to the island, getting to Terschelling. There we are 20 kilometers out of the coast, There's other islands around where we are also working with removal of this exotic species. And then on all the islands, everything that we can trace back is that there was a plant starting from a garden place, one or several. Because people, well, we can assume that people like to bring fishes. Well, we know people like to bring fishes and plants from one place to another, and especially in gardens. And so it's very easy to introduce from another place this exotic species. And especially years ago, there was not so much attention, and nobody was aware how big a disaster it is in a nature area to bring such a species, conscious or by accident. Um, and then, so this on the Terschelling Island, we don't know, but the first places where this plant was found was around in a lake that is flooding also some garden ponds where people, or garden ponds adjacent to the garden where people have different species released, of course, because they have a nice place. So it's assumption to say, okay, the plant was introduced in the garden. We don't know, or I don't know. But at least there was in this first place where it was found, it was around gardens where the lake flooded also the garden ponds. That's a fact. So from and now what you have seen, or what at least what I have seen in the last 3 years, about at least 2 years here on the island, that and the scientific the scientists with who we work from the Stichting Bargeveen also, we have been looking how is going this progress of colonization over the island, and everything shows that the plant was occupying from the starting from these first lakes and spreading out from there, stepping further and further and further. And this I mentioned because it's what's happening is that the plant is occupying more and more lakes, but we can reduce it to it started on one place. Very important, because that's why I feel confident with what we are doing. Because if the plant would colonize different places on the island, then and especially if they're natural areas, then we have to question, where do they come from? Do they come with a dip net? Do they come with a boot? Do they come with the birds? Do they? And in this situation and in all the islands, we find that there's always a start in a garden. So at this moment, it's still so we suggest still that the colonization of the island has been from a garden. But of course, now we are well. I'm involved now for about 2 years, I think, and that means that in these and in these years, the plant has colonized different places, and even it can be that it's colonizing now in different ways. We don't know. It's exciting to see what will happen in the next growing season. Very exciting. It's a very big thing. But what is very, I wanted to say interesting, because it's also very fascinating what is happening. But we can see that this plant was in first, when I came here, it was in, let's say, call it 2 lakes, and on the other side of this dike, so you could say, okay, 3 areas already. And then it was clear that we could remove the plant from these areas, which would mean a big investment, and we did so, and it was done so, and it was cleaned, and it was 1 year completely clean, all those areas that we cleaned in this thorough way. But by the time that we could start cleaning, other lakes were already colonized by this plant. And yeah, is it a threat for nature? Well, we have removed the plant, and that's quite a big impact in the area. But nature's coming easily back, and they were lakes that were already had been under machines before. Nature, between brackets, is coming back, but different species can recolonize this area. But then, of course, we have seen that the plant has gone to different areas. And, well, illustrative is that, let me think, last December, not the last December, the December before, um, about that time, maybe January 2019, was the first time that I went to the second lake that was already colonized. I didn't dare to look at it before, but we knew it was there. And then it was in maybe on 4 different corners of the lake. There were a few plants to be found, but they were not just a few plants already. They had really colonized, let's say 10 or 20 by 5, yeah, like let's say 5 areas of 100 square meters. And they were very small, but they were clearly present. And then we thought maybe we can remove this just with a machine, but it would be so expensive, so difficult to reach. It was ridiculous to say that. So we couldn't really do anything. Thing was, of course, when we started cleaning also already, before we could get organized, the permissions and the money, 1 year or 2 years had passed, and then these other lakes were colonized. Yeah, so that's a small detail because it's colonizing very fast. So we got now in last January 2019, we saw some plants on this next lake. And then we said, okay, maybe with a machine, but it wasn't possible. And then we went by hand, doing the best we could, but it doesn't really work. So if we would do it by hand, we would need to do it with the whole army at the same time, so we could be in front. And well, we were doing by hand a lot, and I was invested in that. And then slowly the area was getting bigger and bigger and bigger because we remove it, everything we can see removed from one spot. But then the next week already, or 2 weeks later, it results that half a meter further they are also every time. And then if we go 2 weeks later, we see that it was not just half a meter, but it was 1.5 meter. So that's how difficult it is. And by hand, that's quite a big surface to take. So what happened, then we said we had the water levels relatively low. And then in summer, well, we just couldn't do it by hand anymore, that was for sure. But we saw also that all the area where we hadn't been by hand, it was just invaded by that time. And we said, okay, then let the water come up and let it be underwater so that it will not be on the surface. So that the birds that are coming, they will not transport it to other lakes, which was, of course, our main worry. And I will not talk about all the other lakes that we have found where it has colonized by now, which are a few. But to come back to this lake, that was in January 2019, almost nothing to find there, to be found. It's a 5 hectares lake and almost nothing to be found. But then in August, September, there was nothing to do about, and it was like, wow, the whole survey was full of small plants. But then if people came to have a look, they couldn't really see them. And we had to say, go down on your knees, and then you might see them. So it were plants, but they were so small that it wasn't visible at the first sight. And then, of course, it was there. And then we had let gone the water up from September on, let's say. And now it's March. And all those areas that they were already with little plants colonized, and it's really a big part of this lake, they have now 30 centimeter thick layer of growing full cover plants. So yeah, it's going really fast. And of course the birds are going in there, and soon, yeah, of course, also not soon, but in general, people go out with the dog and people are walking through the nature. It just goes very easily to another lake. So at this very moment, we are cleaning this lake that I referred to now with huge machines. It's very big. And then we get to the next question. What's worse? The plant removal or the plant itself? So yeah, that's a big question. It's very difficult. It has been very difficult for me personally also, what to do, what to decide, how to continue. I've had my moment that I said, oh, we can't do it, we can't win it. And especially because we can't act so fast. We need to act before it's actually visible almost. So, and what happened was that in September we had a few more lakes that I said I wouldn't talk about, but there were a few lakes. And we did go directly with the machine a bit in to take that these little corners or to do something. Not all with machine, some with hand. And then we saw that in the next 4 months, nothing to be found. So that gave new energy, like, okay, maybe not the whole island is yet invaded by this plant. And so I'm behind what we are doing now. We are removing now in the last lake, let's say, where it's a very big area of this plant. It's 5 hectares lake. So we are removing it there. And we hope that in the next month, it will be not that bad where it's coming up. And it can be coming up on places. I'm quite sure it will come up on some places. But the question will it be on some places or will it be on all the temporary lakes? And then we get back to, we are doing big things here. And it's costing a lot of money. Is it worth? Well, at this point, it's still worth it for me to do so. But as we will have another 10 or 15 areas occupied, then we have to give up, of course. Or of course, because then we will not have any. We will have to destroy the whole system completely. And now we are on a local scale. You can say destroying the local system completely. But they are local systems within a network of fantastic temporary lakes. So they will be recolonized, at least by the plants and animals. But if we don't remove the plant, all those other temporary lakes around, they will be converted into green Crassula areas. Maybe it will not last 100 years. Maybe not. But I think it will. Well, it will not last 100 years because we will go in machines like we always do as Dutch. But but if we don't remove everything, then the plant will be colonizing very fast. So big thing the next half year, what will happen? Will there be a few places or will there be a lot of lakes? And then if there's a lot of lakes, meaning nearly all the longer lasting waters on the island, then I will say, then it doesn't make sense because before we are finished with the, let's say if there's 10 lakes, before we are finished with lake number 10, then lake number 5 will be recolonized already. So it's a circle, and then we remove so thoroughly everything that there's no system anymore to respond to this. So then, for sure, some species like Bufo calamita, the netterjack, will be very happy. But for certain plants and animal species, it will be killing them instead of helping them. So then we will have to look for an alternative way how to keep this plant and other plants together. Yeah. So it's half an hour I see on the video now. Just a brief summary. And what I didn't go into, which I think is very important, is of course this whole question of exotic species, what to do. We are having a globalization and we are getting things all over, and certain species or certain ideas or whatever, they dominate. And what to do? Remove them. Well, I'm removing on the island because it's an isolated island in the middle of the sea where we can pretty much control what is coming to the island, and people can be a bit aware of what they bring into the island, especially nature people and people who work with machines. They can take care that there's not so fast a plant coming or an animal coming to the island. That's possible. On the mainland, not, but on the island, yes. And there it makes sense. Of course, it's a challenge to really get rid of a certain species that is in the way. But holistically, we are having a globalization. And who are we to decide if that's good or bad? So, what to say with this plant on the island? Yeah. And me, myself, well, I'm not that much better than that plant going everywhere and trying to put my ideas into other people's head and behaviors. And so what to say about that? We have a globalization, and certain species are just going very well on that. And others, they don't. So, but will nature continue? Yeah, nature will continue. Can we enjoy the nature? Well, I think when you walk on the dunes and you look into those lakes and you see those beautiful green areas, you think, oh, that's very beautiful. And equality for nature. Yeah, will there be less species? Yeah, for sure. There will be a lot less species then, if it's just these green areas of Crassula. Yeah. But on a political level, yeah, we have agreed all together in Europe that we want to keep these special habitats that we have and these special species, and we have agreed that we will not let them decline more. So then there's no question. Is this a threat? Yeah, absolutely. Can we do something? Yeah, absolutely. Are we doing it? Yeah, we are. Will it be enough? We have to see. But is it better for the species and the communities to now invest in removing this species? I would say for sure. And we will see what we say in 2 months. That's the big question. But at this moment, yeah, we will have to remove the plant where it is if we want to keep temporary lakes with beautiful natural communities. They are about the last in Europe we have. Yeah. I hope it's not in Denmark yet, in the Fur area. This is very beautiful, also with temporary lakes. But there's not that many of those in the world. Or in the world, I don't know, in Europe. Yeah. So this would be my answer to the question. Yeah, should we remove the plant? Yeah, we should. Yes. And to keep a refugee of real and a reference of real natural original community of species and of plants and animals on the islands or on the pure sand that we hardly have left in the Netherlands.